Imagine stepping into the most secure room on earth. The windows are blacked out, every phone is taken away, jamming equipment is switched on, designed to block any signal trying to get in or out. Then the doors close. 133 cardinals are locked inside the Sistine Chapel. No cameras, no internet, no contact with the outside world. Inside that room, they're about to choose the next leader of 1.4 billion Catholics. But then something unexpected happens. According to a book published the following year, one cardinal is caught with a live cell phone signal. Security detects it almost immediately. The phone is handed over. The Vatican never confirms who it belonged to. 2 days later, white smoke rises above the chapel. A new pope steps onto the balcony. For the first time in 2,000 years of church history, an American has been elected. His name is Leo XIV. But the Vatican, it quietly produces another leader, on schedule, inside the same locked room, because the real mystery isn't who becomes pope. The real mystery is something much bigger. What is a system that keeps producing one, no matter who's inside it, and no matter what happens to the man who held the job before? Most people think the papacy is all about one man, dressed in white, standing on a balcony, giving speeches, making decisions, but that's the illusion, because the Pope is the face of the institution. He isn't the institution itself. In most countries, the moment a leader dies or steps down is one of the most dangerous moments the system will ever face. Power has to change hands. Elections have to be organized, political alliances shift. Sometimes, the entire country becomes unstable. History is full of governments that survived wars, only to fall apart during a transfer of power. Centuries before most modern nation-states even existed, the church had already built a system that could survive one pope after another, not with one safeguard, with three. The first is the Conclave, a succession system designed to keep the outside world outside. The second is the Roman Curia, a permanent bureaucracy that keeps the Vatican running between popes and quietly shapes what any pope can realistically do. Outside Rome, most people have never heard its name. The third is money, diplomacy, and global access that a city-state of 800 people has no business possessing. On their own, none of these systems are particularly mysterious, but almost nobody stops to look at them together, because that's when the picture changes. You stop seeing a man and you start seeing a machine that replaced one pope in 2025 without missing a beat, and while the world was watching the white smoke, the rest of that machine never stopped working. The conclave looks ancient, almost mystical, but it's one of the most carefully engineered elections on earth. Every rule exists for one reason: to keep the outside world outside. Even the name says it. Conclave literally means with a key. For centuries, cardinals were locked inside until they decided. One 13th century election dragged so long that officials tore the roof off the building and cut meals to bread and water. The lesson stuck. Today, the process is faster, but in many ways, it's even more secure. Phones are taken away, windows are sealed, electronic jamming equipment runs throughout the entire election. That's exactly why the unauthorized cell phone signal in 2025 was detected so quickly. The system noticed something that didn't belong and shut it down. In 2025, 135 cardinals were eligible, the first time the number exceeded the traditional limit of 120. And here's what's easy to miss. Most of those men were appointed by the previous pope, which means every conclave is influenced by someone no longer alive. A pope dies, but the people he chose are still choosing his successor. His influence outlasts the funeral. And that phone from the opening? We still don't know who had it. The Vatican never said. Some institutions protect information. The Vatican protects silence. The white smoke rises. A new pope is elected. The world sees a man in white step onto a balcony. It feels like the moment everything changes. But inside the Vatican, that's only the beginning. Here's the part most people never hear about. The Pope doesn't personally manage the day-to-day operations of the Vatican. That responsibility belongs to the Roman Curia, the Church's permanent administration, a network of dicasteries, tribunals, departments, and thousands of career clergy who remain in place no matter who becomes Pope. Some of them serve through 3, 4, even 5 different papacies. Presidents come and go. Prime ministers come and go. The people who understand how the Vatican actually works often say exactly where they are. And that's why changing the church is so much harder than electing a new pope. Take Francis. He spent more than a decade trying to reform the Vatican's finances, pushing for greater transparency, changing how money was managed, trying to modernize parts of an institution that had operated the same way for generations. But reforms don't end when a pope wants them to. They move at the speed of the institution. Some succeed, some stall, some simply become the responsibility of the next pope, which is exactly what happened in 2025. Leo XIV didn't inherit a finished system, he inherited unfinished work, and an institution that naturally moves much more slowly than any individual leader. That isn't necessarily corruption, and it isn't necessarily resistance for its own sake. It's something much older. Every institution built to survive for centuries develops momentum. Momentum creates stability, but it also makes change incredibly difficult. That's the trade-off. The very system that protects the church from collapsing during a transition also makes it difficult for any one pope to transform it quickly. That's the second piece of the machine. Leadership may change, but the institution keeps moving, exactly as it was designed to do. Up to this point, this story could still sound like it's only about religion. It isn't, because the machine doesn't just protect power, it also protects influence. And nowhere is that more obvious than in one of the Vatican's most controversial financial scandals, June 18th, 1982. A London postal worker is crossing Blackfriars Bridge early in the morning. He looks over the railing and sees a body hanging beneath the bridge. The man's pockets are filled with bricks and 4 different currencies. His name is Roberto Calvi. To the Italian press, he was known as God's banker, not because he worked for the church, but because his bank, Banco Ambrosiano, counted the Vatican Bank as its largest shareholder. Just weeks earlier, Banco Ambrosiano had collapsed. More than $1 billion had disappeared through a maze of shell companies in Panama. Investigators traced the money through a web of international transactions. Documents pointed toward letters signed by the president of the Vatican Bank. Calvi knew the walls were closing in. He fled Italy using a false passport. Then the people around him began disappearing too. His personal secretary died after jumping from a window, leaving behind a note denouncing him. 9 days later, Roberto Calvi was dead beneath Blackfriars Bridge. At first, authorities ruled it a suicide. Years later, after new investigations, that conclusion changed. The official finding became murder, but no one was ever convicted. The Vatican Bank denied any legal wrongdoing. Even so, it later made a large payment to Banco Ambrosiano's creditors. The church described it as a recognition of moral involvement, not legal responsibility. Moral involvement. That distinction mattered because the Vatican wasn't just protecting money, it was protecting the credibility of an institution that operates across borders. And that's only one side of the story. The other side is diplomacy. Today, the Holy See maintains formal diplomatic relations with 184 states. Its representatives, known as apostolic nuncios, serve as ambassadors in capitals around the world. It's a diplomatic network older than most modern governments, older than intelligence agencies like the CIA. Money, diplomacy, global access, all of it continues to function, no matter who wears the white cassock, because this machine was never designed to depend on one man. It was designed to outlast every one of them. Now think back to where we started. That locked room, the confiscated phone, the white smoke. On the surface, it looked like a religious ceremony, a centuries-old tradition playing out exactly as it always has. But underneath, something much bigger was happening. The system was doing exactly what it was built to do. Someone inside broke the rules. The system found it. A pope died. The system replaced him. The world kept watching. The machine kept moving. And that's the real story. The Conclave solves the problem of succession. The Curia keeps the institution running between leaders. The Vatican's financial and diplomatic networks preserve influence far beyond the walls of Vatican City. 3 different systems, working toward the same goal: continuity. Most governments spend generations trying to build institutions that survive individual leaders. Some succeed, many don't. The Vatican has spent centuries refining that idea, not by relying on extraordinary people, but by building a structure that's designed to outlast them. That's why the identity of the Pope matters. But not in the way most people think. The man shapes the institution survives the man. And maybe that's a secret. For nearly 2,000 years, kings have fallen, empires have disappeared, borders have been redrawn, entire civilizations have risen and collapsed. But behind the walls of Vatican City, the process begins again. The doors close, the ballots are cast, white smoke rises, another pope steps onto the balcony, and the machine keeps turning. The man changes, the system doesn't. Maybe that's the real reason the Vatican has endured for nearly 2,000 years. Not because every pope was extraordinary, but because the institution was built to survive the moments when they weren't. If you enjoyed this deep dive, consider subscribing, because sometimes the most fascinating stories in history aren't about the people at the top, they're about the systems that quietly outlive them all.